Fans got a sneak preview of the Miami Heat roster during their annual public scrimmage, and we'll give you our takeaways. What am I doing? Bam's shooting threes. Better shooter than Duncan Robinson. MVP season on deck. Woo! Let the overreactions fly on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat Media members, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Preseason is around the corner. We will be going live on YouTube for Tuesday night's preseason opener in Charlotte. So you can check that out on your YouTube channel, on the YouTube channel, and in your podcast feed after the game. A reminder that the best way to support the show is to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app, and make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. The Heat held their annual red, white, and pink scrimmage on Monday night, and even though it's just an inter-squad scrimmage, we do have some takeaways. We'll get to what Erik Spoelstra said about Nikola Jovic competing for a starting spot in a second, but we have to start with Bam Adebayo, who went 5 for 11 from three-point range in the scrimmage, David. He came out, made 2 in the first couple of minutes, went 3 for 4 in the first quarter. He was making them from everywhere. The first one off a pass on the left wing, made the next one in the left corner. The third one he made in the first quarter was just like a straightaway pull-up, kind of like what we saw most of last year when he did make those threes right in front of the basket. And then he just continued to kind of pour him in like he was Steph Curry or Duncan Robinson or Klay Thompson or something. Like, again, all over the arc. There was some ill-advised ones. There was like one time in the second half when it was starting to get into a little bit of silly season, he'd like pulled up from 35 feet out just for fun. And I was like, okay, so you could look at this and say, well, it's just a scrimmage. Who cares? Like, he's not going to be taking 11 threes in a basketball game in the regular season, which is probably true. But I still think, even if he still made 5 of them. And most of them, the ones that he made, were normal three-pointers, not like the just for fun inter-squad scrimmage, let me pull up from the logo type of threes. So I do think that there's something to take away from this, David. What about you?
Yeah, I think if my reaction showed anything, it's optimism, and I think it's going to carry over. I really do. I think it's like there were too many possessions over the course of the last couple seasons where Bam has just had the ball at the top of the key, or maybe even like a foot inside the line, where you could tell it was obvious they were giving him that kind of space, and he was looking for the play to kind of normally, organically get into a decent look. But I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I think if he's got the ball that wide open from the top, he's going to let it fly, and I think he should. And I think yesterday was an indicator that this is the new normal for him moving forward. And I think it's a great place to be because he can't shoot the ball. We've been talking about this for years, and I think we're finally here. Like, this is such a watershed moment for Heat fans because there has been years of talking about Bam. I remember looking at grainy footage of him in an off-season workout when you were covering the Warriors 4 years ago, and being like, all right, this is it. Could this be the year that we start to see the Bam Adebayo three-point shot? And, it did not work out that way, obviously. And yes, last year we saw a taste of it. And then at the Olympics, we saw a little bit more of it. And now we're starting to see, I think, the beginnings of the main course here, which is I think that it's going to be a part of his offensive repertoire. And that's fine. I think as long as he has everything else in that bag of his, and I know the bag has been questioned as far as its depth and what he actually has in there. But I think if you can bring a three-point shot along with that mid-range jumper that was improved last year, and I'm sure we'll still see it on occasion, and the face-up game, which I've talked about before being a key component using his size and speed, I think this is an opportunity for Bam to be the best offensive player that he's been in throughout his career.
Yeah, what I wrote for my little recap of this on All You Can Heat was it felt more like a reward of hard work than just a for fun exception, right? Like this wasn't just a devil may care, who cares about it's just Shaquille O'Neal taking 3-pointers in the All-Star game. That's not what this was. This was Bam being like, I've been working on this, and now I'm going to show all the fans here that I've been working on this. And it might be a sneak peek of what's to come. Again, nobody expects him to take 11 threes in a game this season. Nobody would expect that, and I would actually advise against it. I don't think that that's a good use of Miami's offense. What I liked about the threes was it did feel like it came in a different kind of flow in the offense. You mentioned about Bam passing up open three-pointers in the past. A lot of that time, it's him dribble handoff on the perimeter. Nobody's guarding him. He's kind of looking for that water polo pass somewhere on the floor, and the three-pointer might be there. He doesn't take it, and he drains 4 seconds off the shot clock while he's waiting for something else to happen. That wasn't the case here, not necessarily because he was in those same positions. He was off the ball. Like Terry Rozier and Jimmy Butler were running a pick and roll over here, and Bam was lifted on the left wing, waiting for that kick out pass. We haven't seen that. Bam Adebayo waiting in the corner like it was the Olympics for a drive and kick, for an open drive and kick. That is not what we're accustomed to seeing from Bam, and I think this goes hand in hand with the changes that we've talked about with Erik Spoelstra's offense, where it's not going to be so much Bam and Jimmy creating from the low post, kind of inverted offense, create from the low post, spray out to the shooters. It's going to be everybody drive, kick, drive, kick, drive, kick until you get a good shot, which has been an Erik Spoelstra offense in the past, and he's going to get back to that here. And that's why I think you see Bam getting those open looks. And by the way, even the Heat's, his own teammates did not defend him. They didn't defend him in the scrimmage. Now, granted, they didn't defend a whole lot of anybody in this half-serious scrimmage, and so maybe that's part of it. But he needs to be making those shots even when he's wide open. That's the key, because that 3 points, whether it's wide open or contested, still counts as 3 points. It's not necessarily going to create space for his teammates right away, but he'll get on the path of, okay, eventually the other team's scouting departments will say, look, you got to actually defend this guy out there. You can't just leave him wide open. And so, yeah, I was really surprised. Like a lot of Terry Rozier driving and kicking to Bam Adebayo. He, again, doing it from different spots on the floor. What I loved about what Erik Spoelstra said after the scrimmage was about Bam. He says, quote, I think he'll be able to step right in and take those kinds of shot, and it'll fit into our system, end quote. This stuff is designed to be part of Miami's offense, in other words.
Is it like a very watered down big three type offense where you could see Bam kind of taking on the Chris Bosh role, Jimmy as again a pseudo LeBron James, and Terry Rozier kind of in that Dwayne Wade role, where again, as you mentioned, driving to the rim, kicking it out, and then finding Bam wide open in the corner or along the wing there or something. You know, it's just.
Does that make Tyler Herro Mario Chalmers?
Maybe he certainly earned that kind of frustration from the fans, so it's certainly possible there. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like it's something that they're going to continue to develop, and I think it's going to be something that we're going to see more often now. Should we set the over under on how many threes per game that we see from Bam Adebayo?
Well, over the last 20 games, attempts or makes?
Attempts.
Over the last 20 games of last season, he averaged 1.5 3-point attempts per game. So I'm thinking between 2 and 3. Yep.
I don't know if 2.5 over the course of 82 games, that might average a little high, but it could be around there.
Yep.
2.5 attempts. Let's say 2.5 attempts, maybe 2.4 attempts per game.
I was thinking 2.3. We're in the same ballpark.
Yeah. Like, 35% shooting, maybe. That's not nothing. And I think it's a very encouraging sign, because this is the evolution. This is a very different, I made the joke about the big three, but this is a very different NBA than it was 12 years ago when Chris Bosh started exploring that and stretching the floor at the 5, et cetera. It's a very 12 years ago. It seems like an eternity ago. And yet I think now we're starting to see this evolution with Bam. And I think it's going to be part of the regular repertoire, because there have been too many wide open looks in the past that he's just, given up. And I don't think that's going to be the case moving forward.
Is there any chance that he kind of climbs to Kristaps Porzingis or Brook Lopez levels? They're averaging usually 5 3-point attempts per game. That seems like a little much for Bam, just because there's more. Yeah. Like, he could do more inside the paint than Porzingis. Porzingis could do he's a good post up player, but he's kind of like punch the ball in there. Yeah, like 1-2 dribbles and put it up at most. Where Bam's gonna finesse a little bit more. Brook Lopez used to have a post game. He's barely used in that regard anymore. Even though when he does, it's kind of fun. But Yeah, I think at first it would be like 2 to 3 3-point attempts per game seems normal. The other thing that Spo said too was not only do we have Bam, we have Thomas Bryant and Kel'el Ware who could shoot threes, and he did mention that Ware will get to that point. So he wasn't like a full throated like Kel'el Ware is going to be shooting threes right away. Eventually he'll get to that point, which is something that you and I have said a lot in terms of our reporting on this. Is hey, right now it's rim roll and that's your job for Ware, but Spo made the point, like, look, we've got 3 centers on the roster who are capable of shooting threes. This is part of the offense now. So that to me is the biggest revelation. This is now a part. Centers shooting threes is part of Miami's offense.
Did he consciously exclude Kevin Love as a quote unquote center?
He might have also mentioned Kevin Love, and that might be mine.
Okay.
That might be mine. So I have to go back, but maybe Kevin
No,
Love
either
is more
way.
of a backup 4 now. I don't know, but
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, was he kind of cluing us into Kevin's role this season? Like, I mean, I know I asked him about that when he re-signed with the team this summer, and he envisions the possibility of playing more of the 4 spot. So I don't know how that's going to work out defensively, but I'm curious to see if we'll see more lineups with him and Bam sharing the floor, and then maybe switching on defense. It's possible.
Erik Spoelstra may have dropped another hint about the starting lineup. We'll talk about what that is next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. It's America's #1 for a number of reasons. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play, and there's so much more. And guess what? It's all on the same page where you place your bets. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right, just $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's FanDuel.com. Make sure you go visit there today. FanDuel.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. We want to invite you to the exclusive Locked On Heat Insider community. If you want to join, there's a link in the show notes on YouTube and in your podcast description. If you join, you're going to get a lot of cool stuff, exclusive content, insider info from me and David's reporting on the ground, game notes and stats while we cover the games live. If you were there last night, you would have been getting basically play-by-play of the scrimmage that wasn't televised. So we got a lot of new subscribers just from that. You're also going to get intel on moves and trades that could happen before the trade deadline. And best of all, the chance to interact with us one-on-one through the subtext messaging platform. The best way to be a Locked On Heat lifer. If you want to join, you can sign up with the link in the show notes. It's free for 14 days. After that, it's $4.99 a month. If you want to cancel at that point, no worries, no sweat, easy peasy. You could do that. But we're really excited for this chance to connect with all of you this season. So, quick update: Tyler Herro, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Josh Richardson. They did not participate in the scrimmage on Monday night, and they're going to be out for Tuesday night's preseason opener in Charlotte. Herro and Jaquez are out with minor groin strains. They're considered day-to-day. There's not too much concern there from the part of the team. They're expected to play again in this preseason. They're just not going to be playing in Tuesday's preseason opener. Josh Richardson, that's not new. He's still recovering from, the season-ending shoulder surgery from last year. But
the Jaime injury, to me, is a little concerning because it's a groin injury that kind of took him out for a couple of weeks last year. It was a problem at Summer League last year as a rookie, and it seems like it's been an ongoing problem, maybe even from his UCLA days. So I know they're not expressing concern, nor would they. It's the Heat. But at the same time, I think there has to be some level of concern here because it's just like it just
he did undergo an MRI, which in and of itself is somewhat notable. But maybe that's because it's been a lingering issue, and maybe that MRI came back and said, "Hey, there's something not to worry about here." But it's a little bit of a bummer that for a team that wanted to be healthy this season more than anything, right? You talk to every player, number one thing, health. We need to be healthy. And already you're down 2 guys who have been a little unhealthy, right? You talk about Jaime with this recurring groin injury, and then Tyler Herro, who just seems to be something bothering him all the time. It's not a great way to start your preseason, but I look around the league and I'm like, a lot of guys are kind of missing games for no reason too. So it's hard to really judge until we get into the regular season games.
Jimmy was out there.
Something to monitor. All that said, because we didn't get Tyler Herro in the scrimmage, Alec Burks started in his place in the projecting starting lineup. Spo went with Nikola Jovic at that power forward spot alongside Terry Rozier, Jimmy Butler, and Bam. when asked about having Nikola Jovic play as part of the Heat's projected starting lineup, here's what Spoelstra had to say, quote, "He didn't do anything to not at least have us look at that." End quote. So a few double negatives in there, a little confusing word salad there, but he didn't do anything to not at least have us look at that. What do you make of that?
We were talking about this, and I saw the quote when it popped up last night following the scrimmage, and it was just, what? I don't know. I really wish I could make something out of it, but you made the joke, not exactly a ringing endorsement. Didn't really say anything. It's like, well, Nico wasn't terrible out there. It's not. We had this episode just last week where we were looking at the fifth starter and the potential options. Obviously, Jaime wasn't out there, so he's not realistic there. And then you had Haywood Highsmith starting on the other team, not alongside the starters. So I guess Nico is probably the starting four by default because nobody else has been able to get past him. But he hasn't done anything either, as Spo mentioned, he hasn't done anything so badly. He hasn't crapped the bed so completely that he's taken himself out of the starting lineup. But he hasn't done anything great to really earn it either.
Right.
And that's not exactly encouraging. So, because we were hoping that he would be able to kind of find his flow and continue to be aggressive, all the things he talked to us about at Media Day. And that does not seem to be the case over the course of training camp. He did not find a way to establish himself and say, this is my job. I'm going to hang on to it, and there's nobody who's going to take it from me. So that's a little unfortunate, at least how I perceive it. And I might be just reading into Spo's purposely vague answer, but I think that's kind of what you get from it.
I think you're right. Look, in training camp, from what I understand, he got the heavier load of the reps with the starting group, right? With those four guys who we know is going to be starters. It was always his job to lose, and evidently he has not lost it. is sort of what I'm gathering from Erik Spoelstra's quote here. Although it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to take a few different looks. Like what would it have looked like if Jaime hadn't been dealing with this groin strain? Would he have gotten that starting job or project? I don't know. I would think not. I still think Jovic has done enough to not lose the job. But in the scrimmage, he finished with 7 points on 3 of 6 shooting, 1 rebound, 2 assists, and 1 foul in 19 minutes. And for a long time, and this has been the problem with Nico, is there's times where there's flashes and you're like, wow, what all the things that this guy can do. And then there's other times where he just disappears for a long time. And look, it's a scrimmage. Nobody's playing that hard. I don't care like that much about anything, but I'm going to have my eyes on him in tonight's preseason opener against Charlotte when, again, preseason game doesn't matter, but it matters for somebody like Nikola Jovic, who is literally fighting for a position in the starting lineup. And so I'm going to be looking at that. There was a moment in that scrimmage where I can't remember if it was Drew Smith or Isaiah Stevens or one of sort of those backup reserve guys where Nico had the ball in the low post and went at him. He missed the shot. That's okay, but he did go at him the way that he was talking about, trying to punish smaller players. So there was moments there. I'm going to have my eye on him a lot, though, in this Charlotte game. I don't really know where we go from here. If Jaime's not going to be available, then basically it comes down to Nikola Jovic and Haywood Highsmith for that last spot. I do think that he'd prefer to bring Highsmith off the bench at this point. At least that's what it looks like. You and I have always said it's pretty much Nico and Jaime as the front runners in terms like if it's a 3-man race, like Highsmith is a dark horse in that race, but those two would be the favorites with maybe Jovic having the inside track, and that just seems to be the case now.
Well, I'll ask you this because we've got a lot of feedback after that episode I referenced earlier. A lot of people suggested, well, why isn't Kel'el Ware an option as a starter? Because you could slide Bam down to the 5. And I think we saw from last night's scrimmage that Bam will continue playing the center. For better or for worse, that's just the way that Erik Spoelstra has it planned out. What did you see from Ware? Did you see any moments there where Ware and Bam shared the floor? Is there the potential
they
there?
They were on opposite teams, and I think that was for a reason.
By design,
Ware finished 8 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists on 4 of 9 shooting. He wasn't bad. He did take 2 3-point attempts in the scrimmage. Missed both of them. But one of them was from the corner. It actually looked pretty good. Kind of just hit the front of the rim. But he probably makes that, 3 times out of 7 or whatever. But yeah, I didn't see much notable from Kel'el Ware other than the guy's still 7 feet tall. And there was a couple of lobs there that were nice and stuff like that. But yeah, the reason we didn't include him is this is not our opinion. We're just kind of telling you who's in the running for the power forward spot. It's Nico, it's Jaime, and again, to a smaller degree, but in the running is Haywood Highsmith. And fans might want to see Kel'el Ware at the 5 and
Sure.
Bam over to the 4. And I get that in terms of your starting lineup. And you're right. We got a bunch of comments about that. Maybe we should have talked about that more, but I feel like we've been covering this topic all summer. It's as much as you might want it to happen right now, it ain't happening right now. This is the difference between us giving opinions, which we usually give on the show, versus, hey, like, we're not even going to waste your time because it's not going to happen on day one. Now, we're going to see it. We are going to see that lineup at different portions in the game. I'm telling, and we're going to see it early in the season. And heck, Kel'el Ware might progress the way that Nikola Jovic progressed last year, or Jaime Jaquez was great as a rookie, and he might end up being a starter by the end of the season. I don't anticipate that happening because that would be a dramatic shift mid-season, right? That's a very different kind of lineup, moving Bam to a new position, adding a 7-footer. That's kind of a new thing, but for right now, we're just not going to see it. And so, it does feel like, it's Nikola Jovic's job to lose, and he hasn't done enough to lose it yet. And by the way, he could still get better at that in that position.
Yes.
And I think that's what the Heat are looking for, at least now.
I think there's just too much at stake this season in terms of Jimmy's future with the team, going all in, making sure everybody's healthy, and making one last run with this version of this roster. I think that's the overall plan. And that being the case, putting a 20-year-old center that's a little underweight and has no NBA experience, putting him in the starting lineup, it's just too risky. I know the potential is there. And as you said, he's going to get that opportunity at some point this season. He might eventually grow into it this season, but I would think that the potential of him starting alongside Bam is something that they would probably explore further year or two down the road, which is totally fine. He's 20. You don't
Bam
have
didn't
to put
even
him
play
as a
as
starter.
a rookie.
Yeah, he didn't play for 2 years.
Yeah.
He was backing up Hassan Whiteside for
and
a
he's
while
not,
there.
and you talk to people around the team and the coaching staff and stuff, they're very clear. Like, he's raw, he's not quite ready, but we're getting him ready. That's kind of the paraphrased version of everything you hear. And so, what in that scrimmage I saw it, like, Kel'el Ware defensively, he's not ready yet. Like, he's just not. He's really jumpy. It was a problem. He's not strong enough, and he's really jumpy. And this was something that we talked about in our scouting, or our Blue Notebook scouting report with him. Is
brought it up a lot.
That guy jumps on every pump fake, and Duncan Robinson put him in a blender with 2 pump fakes in the scrimmage. Where
then again, he also did that to Victor Wembanyama, who's like a defensive player of the year favorite. So that speaks more about Duncan having elite ball handling skills.
But Duncan had to break out the Kyrie Irving ball handling to get Wemby off his feet. It took a pump fake, a standstill pump fake, to get Kel'el Ware to jump 5 feet forward.
Not the quickest player in the league. Robinson.
So I was like, you know what? That's that thing. And so, look, bad habits die hard, right? And we have seen progress in that in summer league and stuff, but bad habits die very hard. It is going to take a long time to iron that stuff out of his game. So, but that's the point, right? When you draft a raw 19-year-old, now 20-year-old, and you put him in your development program, this is why the Heat were the best spot for Kel'el Ware to land. And we're excited to watch him. But in terms of starting and playing NBA-level defense against other starters, he's not there yet. The Heat are very excited about Pella Larson, and rightly so. What did Erik Spoelstra envision his role to be? We also have some other player notes from the scrimmage next on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time and their new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than ever. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff, so you just see only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That can get arduous, and it can kind of be like, I don't even want to go through this anymore. It's just too much of a pain to find the right tickets. Well, Game Time has you covered, so you don't have to worry about it, and you know exactly what you're paying for. With their all-in pricing feature, you know exactly what you're going to pay from start to finish. No hidden fees, no worries about whether or not there's going to be some kind of addendum or anything like that. No. You know what you're going to pay for. This is exactly what you want to pay, and you get your tickets exactly the way you want, and you know exactly where you're going to sit because of their seat views feature. So many different things that makes Game Time the best place to buy tickets for concerts, games, comedy shows, whatever you might be looking for, theater. If you're traveling or you're at home, Game Time is the place for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, you create an account, and if you use the code LOCKEDONNBA, that's LOCKEDONNBA, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but if you create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, you get $20 off your first purchase. So download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. The best way to support the show is to hit that subscribe button right now on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast app. A couple other player notes from the scrimmage. One player who stood out, I think at least, was Pella Larson. He's second-round pick out of Arizona. He looked great. He looked really good. He finishes with 21 points on 10 of 16 shooting, which I'm going to do the math really quick. 9 of 10 on two-pointers, 1 of 6 from three-pointers, but shot 90% from two-point range, had 9 assists, 4 rebounds, 0 turnovers in 34 minutes. He was awesome. And Erik Spoelstra, in the post-game session, said that Pella Larson has the capability to be a, quote, elite role player in this league, end quote. So, between this scrimmage, again, half serious, I think you take, what, like 20% away from this, if that, as you would a normal, even preseason game. But between this and what we saw in Summer League and the progress he made in Summer League to the point of hitting the game-winning shot in the Summer League championship game in Las Vegas, we saw him in person. I think his body is NBA ready. I think he's an underrated athlete. I think people look at him as this white European guy and they say, oh, three-point shooter, the next Duncan Robinson, Max Strus. His game is not like those guys at all. He's definitely more of like a Christian Brown, Caleb Martin type of swing guy who is a good athlete who can get to the basket and do stuff, has a little bit of everything in his game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just been really impressed with this guy.
I have been too. And at the same time, I feel like yesterday's performance, and maybe you can speak to this better than I can, but he just doesn't seem to have like, whereas guys are kind of taking it easy and saying, oh, it's only a scrimmage, don't put yourself out. Like, I feel like Pella only probably plays at one speed, and that's just constantly going at a high motor, which is what makes him such an elite, with the potential to be an elite role player, because he just goes out there and he pester the hell out of you. He'll attack, he'll do whatever he has to, which is probably why he'll be in foul trouble a lot in his rookie season. But at the same time, it leads to these kinds of performances where, like, oh, you're not going to take it seriously? Well, this is a do or die situation for me, and I'm going to take this as seriously as every time I step on the court. So that's great. Like, I think that's going to endear him to Heat fans immediately. But at the same time,
he was getting cheers from the crowd too. Like, they loved him. Between that and singing the Backstreet Boys next to Josh Christopher, like, his Q rating among Heat fans skyrocketed. My wife actually went to the game with some with like a couple of her family members and stuff, and they said like everybody, and some of her family members are not, let's say they're not locked on Heat lifers. They're not tuning into the show all the time. They're not exactly the biggest Heat fans. I know. I'm like, come on. But
at least they subscribed, I'm sure.
I didn't even ask, but they better.
Wow.
They came away being like, yeah, that Pella Larson guy, he's really got something there, right? Like that guy. So I thought that was really interesting, and they were all in. I'm with you though. I love that. Like, you don't have to do anything in this scrimmage, right? The job is to show up, say something nice, support the cancer research that the organization is doing. That's the job, right? That's the job.
Yeah.
But you had two guys who came out and said, I have something to say tonight. And it was Bam Adebayo saying, I'm a three-point shooter now. Watch out, Steph. And it was Pella Larson saying, no, I deserve a spot in the rotation, and I'm going to be the high scorer tonight. And dang it, he was. He was the leading scorer of the night with 21 points, and I love that. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's going to endear himself not only to Heat fans, but the coaching staff and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we love this guy's attitude. He's doing this in a scrimmage. Imagine what he'll do in a real game in terms of effort.
I would love to see, because, Jimmy loves poking and attacking and stuff like that in practices, but a guy like Pella, who has just got this constant motor, I wonder how, like, those battles, I know I've made the comp before, but I wonder if it's kind of like the beginnings of a kind of like a Max Strus Jimmy relationship a little bit, because I could just see that being the case. Like, this guy's not going to back down. He might not be very good at this stage in his career, but he's got no quit in him, high energy, high motor, and that kind of stuff tends to, it kind of pisses off veterans a little bit. But a guy like Jimmy, who loves those kind of challenges and loves bringing out that in other players, he might respond to it favorably. I could see him kind of taking him under his wing. Yeah.
I do wonder who kind of takes that spot. So last year it was Jamal Cain. The year before that it was Max Strus. Like, you've seen guys kind of thrive in that role. And like, is it going to be Pella? I could see Josh Christopher maybe being that guy. Keyshawn Johnson strikes me as a guy who would eat up, eat those opportunities up and stuff like that. In terms of some other players who stood out, just some quick player notes before we get out of here. I thought Terry Rozier was fantastic during the scrimmage, and I thought we saw some real flashes of him. I know he was 0 for 4 shooting. I don't care. He had 7 assists, and most of them of the drive and kick nature. And we mentioned the one that he got to Bam. He had a few lobs and things like that. His dribble drive was a big part of the projected starting unit, the red team's offense. And I thought that showed something, right? This was not a scrimmage of just guys playing pickup. They were running stuff, right? For basically the first 2 quarters of this thing. They were really running stuff. And the fact that Terry Rozier was initiating a lot of the offense with those dribble drives means a lot in terms of, I think, where we're going, what we're going to see from this offense. Now, way easier to get rim penetration when nobody's playing any real defense, but it's at least notable that's
and no sign of the lingering injury either. That's, I think, a big concern.
Great point. Pella Larson, talking about him, actually threw it off the backboard to Keyshawn Johnson. Little flash there. I like that little sizzle. Keyshawn Johnson was also a highlight, not necessarily because of his final box score here or his production or anything other than just he had that dunk off the backboard. He had a windmill dunk in transition and a off 2-foot 360 dunk. This dude can dunk, man. Like this guy, and every single one, oohs and ahs from the crowd. I thought it was really cool. We did see the Summer League Championship lineup for a little bit. I think it was in the first quarter, maybe the second quarter. Keyshawn Johnson, Isaiah Stevens, Kel'el Ware, Josh Christopher, and Zion Pullen. So that was kind of cool to see them. Josh Christopher, 17 points on 18 shots. So we kind of got the other side of Josh Christopher there.
How was it singing?
Fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure he was hitting the notes exactly, but I like the showmanship.
Okay. No, we saw that. We saw that up close. Like that was maybe the best interview we had at Media Day. And it was so unexpected. He has a lot of personality. So I think again, if somebody's going to endear themselves to Heat fans, Christopher and Larson are right at the top there. But Keyshawn also doing a great job with that, with his athleticism there. So that's impressive.
Zion Pullen ended up with 18 points on 9 of 12 shooting.
Wow.
2 assists, 5 rebounds in what do you play? 24 minutes. We got a little bit of Nasir Little, nothing very notable there. Drew Smith was good. He played 17 minutes, had 7 points, 3 assists, was the only one of the only players playing like even going 40% on defense. So I thought he actually had a pretty nice game. I thought his court game was pretty good. And that's really it. Those are all my main notes there. I know Thomas Bryant finished with a bunch of points. Thomas Bryant had 19 points in 24 minutes, 8 of 11 shooting. Again, a lot of that stuff coming at the rim where nobody was guarding them. So those were the notable player notes from the scrimmage. We have the first preseason game tonight, Tuesday night, Miami Heat in Charlotte. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your podcast app. Tune in tonight for the Heat's preseason opener in Charlotte when we go live on YouTube immediately after the game. We'll talk to you guys then.